Thank you very much, Rob. I think this is a great summary of the things that you came up with this year. And well, I like this expression, quality of experience, because I know as a volunteer myself, if you have a not such a great volunteering experience, you perhaps are not so inclined to do it again. So I think this is really important, because if we want to keep and retain our volunteers, we need to make sure they have a great experience as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to come here, and especially in this session where we will exchange views on what quality can mean when it comes to volunteering. I'll try to contribute to this reflection by something which I would not like to offer as a model, but just as an example of at least how we in the European Commission see quality in volunteering in the very special case, but which can be surely extended, of volunteering for young people. And I take this example from what we are doing through a scheme which some of you may know, which is the European Voluntary Service. In 2 words, this scheme, the European Voluntary Service, is part of a program, Youth in Action, which supports non-formal learning possibilities for young people. Non-formal learning for young people, this is really the general objective of the program, with 2 specific objectives: the increase in skills and competencies of young people through non-formal approaches. We do not learn only at school. And second, the contribution, the active participation in society. These are the 2 raisons d'être of this Youth in Action program. Youth in Action means 150 million a year, which allows us to mobilize, to reach directly 150,000 youngsters a year, more or less. All young people, but with a special focus on young people with fewer opportunities. The European Voluntary Service, as I said, is part of this bigger program. And here, of course, because of obviously increased unit costs compared to the activities that we can support, we only reach reduced a number of these 150,000 participants. But next year, we are quite sure that we will reach 10,000 volunteers, thanks to the European Voluntary Service, which is something at the same level as, for example, the United Nations volunteers. The European Voluntary Service fits very well with these 2 objectives I've described for the global program Youth in Action. It's a true learning experience. It is offering the possibility to a youngster to spend between 2 months and 12 months abroad, so in another country. So let's just think to the skills acquired when it comes to language learning. You spend 1 year abroad at the age of 20, 24, you master a new language. So definitely a true learning experience, but also very strong focus on the other element, the active participation in society, because it is to work within a community, the hosting community, and to accomplish their task of general interest in the social field, in the environmental field, in cultural field, wherever we can imagine. And here, volunteering, I think, is something which is quite common when it comes to the objectives. This scheme exists since 15 years. We have, of course, been organizing various evaluation exercises, also surveys among the participants to better discover what the impact is on them when it comes to the acquisition of skills, competencies, but also feeling more committed towards society, an increased feeling of being European, because this scheme allows you to volunteer abroad in another country. No? So, again, I'm not sure it is a a model to be pursued, but surely something which it is our objective in any case can be seen as a sort of inspiring scheme, and we have also a political objective, which is to use this tool not only to reach the individuals themselves, 10,000 is a lot, but beyond them to offer to member states, to regions in the Union, the possibility to discover that volunteering abroad works. Volunteering is fine, it's very important. Volunteering for young people is very important. But if, and within the European Union, you volunteer not only in your own country, but also abroad, you add something to it. And this is what we try to prove with this scheme. When we reflected on what quality should be in such a scheme, we came to the importance of focusing on three issues. The first one is the quality of the bodies involved in volunteering. The second one is the importance of the quality in the learning objectives. And the third one is the recognition of what volunteering has meant for the participant. So the first one, quality of the bodies concerned. The volunteer is not alone. In our scheme, there is a sending organization, there is a hosting organization, and sometimes even a coordinating organization which tries to put in contact the organization where the volunteers will volunteer and the city, for example, of origin of the volunteer. In our scheme, in the European Voluntary Service, all these bodies have to be accredited. We have discovered that one of the difficulties for a national scheme, for example, there exist national schemes for volunteering in many of our member states, but one of the difficulties they face to allow a youngster from their country to volunteer abroad is the difficulty to feel confident in the quality of the body where the youngster will volunteer. So accreditation for us is very important. Don't forget that you can volunteer as of the age of 18, for example, in our case. So definitely you have to be able to provide some assurance that the youngster will not be in a difficult situation when it comes to the structure hosting him or her. So our program, generally speaking, the Youth in Action program is not managed that much from Brussels, even though we of course, we program everything, we fix all the rules, but the day-to-day implementation of the program is ensured by a network of national agencies established in all the member states. So it's relatively easy, thanks to such a structure, to have an accreditation process. And all these structures which can intervene in the volunteer, in our scheme, in the European Voluntary Service, have to be accredited by these national agencies. So it's relatively easy, for example, for the Polish National Agency to go and visit regularly the bodies in Poland which are supposed to receive volunteers from France, from Italy, or from wherever you can imagine. This accreditation is for 3 years. It can be renewed, of course, but regular monitoring ensures that the quality is ensured over time. So there are, in effect, 2 steps when a body wants to enter in the process of being supported by the European Voluntary Service. It has to be accredited, so give a minimum quality assurances a priori, and then maybe 2 years later it comes with a project, a concrete project, to host a volunteer or several volunteers, and that the project is judged on the basis of its precise qualities when it comes to the tasks which have to be accomplished, for example. And of course we provide training for the bodies which have been accredited. Second, as I said, we conceive, especially for young people, volunteering as being a learning experience. There is the notion of service, but we consider that the learning dimension is important. And as we sometimes say, volunteering is good for the others, but it's also good for you. And we really see this as a sort of, I would even say, a second chance school for certain youngsters to offer through a rather long-term learning experience, non-formal learning experience, the capacity to increase one's skills, competencies in various ways. We have also noted from the surveys among the participants how much, to which extent, volunteering sometimes leads the youngster back to school because he or she has discovered an interest, for example, for a special job in the future, has tested something, has discovered that compared to the peers, he or she was lacking a certain qualification, and then is interested and better prepared to go back to school and again go on an educational path thanks to a concrete experience in a non-formal learning setting. If training, if it's a learning experience, we also want to support this thanks to a training cycle which we have defined as being at the minimum a training on arrival for all the youngsters who participate in the European Voluntary Service, organized by the national agency of the country where the volunteer is coming. Also a midterm evaluation session, evaluation and training. And we encourage the sending organizations to also prepare the volunteers before their departure to avoid any misunderstanding, any major failure vis-à-vis, for example, the expectations of the volunteer also. So all this is more related to training, evaluation, and preparation of the volunteer before, during, and also after the training, the volunteering period itself, since we encourage the volunteers to participate in annual EVS events where they can also debrief on what volunteering has meant for them. Third, the recognition. Since it is a learning experience, we consider that quality in volunteering also means recognition of volunteering. And you said it in your own presentation. We have established through the European Voluntary Service a certificate, which is called Youth Pass, which tries to identify what the volunteer has got in terms of experience, knowledge, etc., against the 8 key competencies which have been defined at European level. And in our view, and based on the first feedback we receive, the result is important, surely, the certificate, the ability to annex to one's CV the proof I have been volunteering and I've learned something. But surely more important is the process leading to the establishment of the certificate, because this is something which is the result of a discussion, of an exchange between the volunteer and the mentor, and the person, the leader in charge of the volunteer in the hosting organization. Very often, the volunteer is not even aware or capable of putting a word on something he or she has learned, but the mentor is able to draw his or her attention. But you have done this, so you have an experience. Feel confident that you can consider that you would survive in a professional environment in the future if you have this to done. You have done it. So a certain demystification of what skills are is also important, and volunteer, as we all know, is also a very useful way to make youngsters confident in their capabilities. It's not only a question of concrete skills, but also of more intangible behaviors and things like that, the self-esteem and the confidence. So this process of giving a sort of certificate is something which is now fully part of EVS, which means that for 15 years we have, or better say for 13 years, we have given grants to organize volunteering in Europe, and since 2 or 3 years we give grants, of course, because money is important in all this, but we add something else, which is the recognition of the time spent. We do not do this for all the strands of the Youth in Action program, but for volunteering, which is definitely a strongly committing operation. Up to 1 year abroad, of course, it is absolutely logical to keep track of this. I stop here. Surely many other things could be said when it comes to quality, and I'm also here to listen to how we can improve what we offer through the Open Voluntary Service. But this is our vision of what quality could mean. Again, I insist, for young people and abroad, but maybe these are some tracks which can be also followed in other circumstances. The quality of the hosting structures, understanding structures, no misunderstanding on what volunteering is. The quality of the training, it is, in our view, a learning experience, and it should be perceived like this. And third, a recognition of what has been learned, but in so doing, a recognition also of what has been given to the hosting community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lejeune. I think a lot of people in this room probably are involved with an EVS scheme one way or another. I think we all are quite aware of this and the success that this has been of the EU institution. So I'm sure there might be some questions as well to you at the end about the future of Youth in Action as well. So thank you very much.